Did you ever call a friend while walking alone at night to feel safe? Did it work? I'm not a gambler, but I'll bet it didn't. This sense of fear is just one consequence of street harassment. Now, I understand most women relate to this, but I also think that if you're a man watching, you probably had at least once your girlfriend, sister, colleague calling you to feel secured, and you were like, what do I say? Well, you can always talk about the weather. I used to call my boyfriend too. Hey hon, I'm passing through this dark alley, but if you talk to me, they won't hurt me. Which makes no sense. He ain't Harry Potter. What is he gonna do? Pop up from the screen and swing his stick twice? He can't do much. But we as a society can. And we should. Because safety is our right, and I'm tired of feeling anxious and scared. The first step is to call street harassment what it really is: a serious problem. Because the general conception is that street harassment is so trivial, it just happens, and if you just ignore it, it's not really an issue. Well, if you pick the clothes you wear based on fear, if you avoid the park after dark out of fear, if you go for an Uber instead of a 10-minute walk because you're afraid, then I'd say it's a problem. Plus, no Uber driver is happy with the 4-minute ride. 0 stars. Public harassment can lead to more serious attacks or assaults. So let's narrow this buffet of aggressiveness to what consists a street harassment. In very simple words, if you're walking down the street and a stranger out of nowhere targets you and commits an act that makes you feel violated or afraid, congratulations, you've just been harassed. And because I'm a weird woman and I like making lists, I prepared one for you. I named it Examples. Catcalling, stalking, whistling or honking, groping, sexual and offensive comments, sexual advances, threats and insults, and the classic but always trending, indecent exposure. By the way, I lied, I didn't make that list. I borrowed it from Neighborhood Watch. You'll find all my sources in the description. Although the word street is included in the name, we're actually talking about any such action in public spaces, including public transport and parks. And no, I didn't pick these 2 locations randomly. A 2018 Nottingham survey revealed that 37% of all misogyny hate crimes happen on public transport. God, I love the metro. A UN report says that 83% of women in Egypt experienced harassment in public transport, while an ActionAid survey from 2015 found that in France, where I currently live, bonjour, 100% of the women surveyed had faced sexual harassment on the transit system. And I'm here to add myself to this statistic. And when it comes to parks, well, here are some headlines for you. 3 women attacked in Upper Manhattan Park within 1 hour, and police say 1 suspect is likely behind all 3 incidents. October 2023, 2 women assaulted in separate attacks at New York City's Riverside Park this week. July 2023, woman feared for her life during sexual assault in public park. Ireland, March 2023. Yes, these articles do not refer to street harassment, they talk about more serious crimes like attacks, sexual assaults, and even life-threatening situations. But one of the reasons why we get so anxious when walking alone at night or so scared every time we experience harassment in public is because we have those headlines in mind. And we fear that the next article might be about us. Although I don't like portraying people as just numbers, in order to understand the magnitude of the problem, I need to do some serious number dropping. If that's a thing. Basically, here's the statistics of several studies. Australia, 87% of young women reported having experienced either physical or verbal harassment. UK, 71% of women have experienced some sort of sexual harassment in a public space. Philippines, 88% of women ages 18 to 24 have experienced sexual harassment at least once. I sound like I'm presenting Miss Universe. India, 79%, Thailand, 86%, and Brazil, 89% of women have been subjected to harassment or violence in public. The Netherlands, 2 in 3 young women said that they had been harassed on the street at some point in the past year. Afghanistan, 93% of women said they were harassed in public spaces. UK again, surveyed women reported experiencing catcalls, whistles, or stares at least once per month. Like, what's your monthly goal? To reduce the whistles by 80%. 4 out of 5 women and 2 out of 5 men in the UK felt unsafe walking alone after dark in a park or an open space. And no, I'm not surprised the number of women is higher, as street harassment is often gender-based. But I do also feel for the men. Nobody should feel unsafe to take a walk once the sun is down. What is this reverse vampire etiquette? Most people would agree. Harassment is bad, okay? But what many don't realize, unless they experience it themselves, is that the biggest issue is not the moment you get harassed, but the aftermath. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the moment of being harassed is pleasant. We do not enjoy it. I have to make this clarification because we might have alpha males watching to get material for their podcast. According to the Nottingham survey, 75% of people who experienced street harassment reported that it had a long-term impact on them, and 63% of them changed their behavior as a result. Right2Be is a non-profit organization that specializes in addressing and combating street harassment. No, that's not an ad. I mention them because they have a blog where anyone can share their personal stories anonymously. Of course, I too have personal stories, and I will share at the end of this video the one that pushed me to actually make the video. But now I want to present the experiences of other women that highlight some of the key points of street harassment. I like to go on walks in the evenings to clear my head, but in recent months I have experienced uncomfortable moments enough times that I don't go walking anymore. Once a man walking the opposite way turned around and followed me for at least half a mile. He ran up to me in front of my complex and asked me my name. Hey, can I have your name? I already know where you live. I didn't tell him my name, and I think he tried to make it better by saying he had followed me so he could talk to me. It baffles me how people sometimes can't see they're being creepy. That incident completely turned me off from something that used to bring me such peace. Well, yeah. How many times can you say it's just one incident until you end up dropping an activity you love? I was being followed by a man in a store. I froze a bit and didn't know what to do. That is actually common, no one prepares you for this. So I just kept awkwardly moving around the store, not ending up getting what I was there for. I tried to just leave once, but it seemed he was going to follow me straight out. So I bought one item that she probably didn't even need and gave the cashier a desperate look, hoping she would catch on. The customer right behind picked up on what was going on and he gave me an annoying glance and then just told the cashier with a made-up customer need and gave me a chance to leave and get a head start. How insane is it that you leave your house to buy some juice and you end up in a race with the creep who may or may not be planning to hurt you? At least if you know in advance you don't wear heels. Shout out to the other customer who stepped in. In most cases, sadly, bystanders do nothing, mainly because street harassment is normalized. Of course, there are other reasons, especially in big cities. People are in a hurry, they don't pay attention around them, they don't know how to react, they are afraid they'll make things worse, or they just don't care. But on top of all that, as a society, we are definitely accustomed to public harassment, and hence we're also sort of numbed. For example, a US study found that only 23% of men and 20% of women had proactively responded to street harassment that they witnessed as a bystander. Yet victims have argued that bystander intervention is important to them because it gives them a sense of safety and justice. I was on a bus and fell asleep on the way. I felt my arm being pushed and thought it was because the bus was crowded. When I realized it was a man who was masturbating with my arm. I just moved and didn't say anything. I didn't know how to react. And I assumed that in this crowded bus, nobody else reacted either. You were in shock. What's their excuse? By the way, this is why in Japan there are women-only subway cars. Or why in Papua New Guinea they have this bus exclusively for women and children. I was having a great time at a music festival. Even wore clothing that I felt would keep me safe from such an incident. Wearing a full astronaut suit won't keep us safe. No, just imagine a concert where everyone is dressed like an astronaut and they're just bumping into each other. But still got groped. I don't know what I could do differently next time, but I wish someone would do something in these spaces. More people having each other's backs. I included this story because it clearly illustrates the main point of this video. Street harassment is very common but doesn't get the attention it deserves. In most cases, there's no legal framework for actions like catcalling, groping, or stalking, and even when there is one, it's not effective. For example, in France, you can get a fine for catcalling, but in reality, no one gets fined for it, even when it literally happens right in front of the police. In the UK, there are penalties for stalking and harassment, but how effective are they? Based on the statistics I found, not enough. And this goes beyond the legal system. As a society, we think it's not a biggie. Someone calls you a name, get over it. But it keeps happening. Well, keep getting over it. That's our solution. Even when we say to our loved ones that we're afraid to come home alone at night, their proposition is pretend you're talking on the phone or just take a taxi. And you might say, well, what do you want them to do? Teleport you? Sadly, I hear that's not an option yet, so no. I want them to ask, what is the problem? Why is she afraid? Not just think she's a woman, so it's normal. Because if I was a man saying I'm afraid to come home alone, they would be utterly confused and have a lot of questions. Accepting street harassment as an unfortunate normality makes it way harder to tackle it. And for any attempt to succeed in eliminating public harassment, consensus among society is vital. Women calling for action while a big portion of men are indifferent and some even oppose it won't get us anywhere. So this is my call to all the men that made it thus far to this video. Congratulations, I am impressed. If you guys feel that since you're not doing anything wrong, you've basically done your part, please think again. Think of your mother, your sister, daughter, wife, friend who falls victim of harassment way more often than you realize. In fact, talk to the woman in your life and you'll understand the magnitude of the problem and the significance of your help. You may say, sure, I want to help, but what can I do? The same thing we can all do. Speak up when you witness public harassment. Push for proper legislation. And most importantly, educate your male friends, your sons, your cousins, your nephews. Most people harass because they think it's okay. In my research, I came across an interesting point of view that says that some men resist efforts to tackle street harassment because they feel attacked. No irony intended, from these reports, surveys, and articles. They feel that their gender is negatively portrayed and they resist the idea that men are by definition the perpetrators. Sadly, the majority of perpetrators are men. But that doesn't make a man inherently the bad guy. Every adult is responsible for their own actions, and our goal is not to shit on the men. If anything, I am happy that my dad isn't afraid when walking alone at night. I just wish that this was the case for me too. And I don't blame solely the men for what we go through, I blame our society as a whole. But since men are almost exclusively the perpetrators, I do expect you to take some responsibility. I believe every problem has a solution, and experts have proposed several measures against street harassment, although most just cover the problem. But if we're gonna talk about solutions, we first need to address the causes. The Nottingham research team asked the men of the study why they thought some men harass women. And these are the most popular responses and my personal favorite ones. I think there's probably lots of reasons, isn't there? Yes, but that's probably one. Maybe guys just want short-term relationships. Ha! There's a great app for short-term relationships. It's called Tinder. There's male fragility at the moment, so I think there's over-masculine behavior. You're extra masculine if you harass people, because I think men feel threatened by their position in society. Oh no, the most common answer was peer pressure, or in their words, the lad culture. I love this expression, which does bring me to my previous point of the importance of educating our boys. Teaching them to respect women is crucial. But there's more. For example, teach all our kids to stand their ground and to not compromise their values simply because Brian said it's cool. We also have to teach them boundaries. If every behavior is acceptable when you are 10 or 15, who will educate you when you're 20? And I'm not justifying anyone. After a certain age, it's up to each person to develop a moral compass. But as a society, we have an obligation to facilitate this process from a young age. This is probably the most efficient and long-term solution. Apart from that, local authorities and the police definitely need to step up. Street harassment incidents rarely get reported because the victims are treated with indifference and there are no systems in place for victim support. Agencies must collect and share data on safety concerns and incidents, and they need to start properly responding to them. Local authorities are also responsible for raising awareness and encouraging bystander support. Other measures that can make our streets, parks, and open spaces safer, especially at night, are artificial lighting. Somehow it helps when you can see their face. Maybe they feel self-conscious because they forgot to shave. Easy escape routes, better visibility, and of course CCTV cameras, while understanding privacy concerns. Street harassment is a topic that touches me personally. I've experienced it many times, can't complain, but a recent incident triggered me to do this video. To be honest, it wasn't the most serious one. For example, when I was a student, I was followed by a car to my home and the driver kept asking me to marry him. In hindsight, the way my romantic life is going, maybe I should have said yes. By the way, if you find this video useful, sharing it or liking it would mean a lot to me. And if you'd like me to make more, leave a comment or subscribe. YouTube gurus say it helps with the algorithm. Anyway, my story. A few weeks ago, I was walking in a very busy street in broad daylight when a guy started shouting at me, "Madame this, Madame that." I didn't respond because that's what we're told to do, just ignore them. Then he started coming towards me and sending me kisses. I kinda felt like I was in a trap video clip, and when he finally reached me, he grabbed my hand. At this point, I couldn't just ignore him, so I slammed his hand and told him to stop or I'll call the police. I was bluffing, no way the police would come. And the guy looked at me like he was 5 years old and I just threw his ice cream on the ground. He was genuinely staring at me like saying, "You need to apologize." And I was so shocked by his audacity, I almost did. I started doubting myself. Then he screamed, "Salope, slut," and he f***ed off, which instantly reassured me that I was in the right. This incident made very clear to me two things. One, the perpetrator often doesn't realize he's wrong. Two, nobody cares. No one wants to intervene. So here I am asking you to care, asking you to intervene. I know that a comment or a stare in the street sounds trivial and harmless, but everyday comments and stares have a lasting impact on us. And the comment from an attack is one wrong response away.